The Falcons have proven themselves to be the best team to ever play Warzone. But what about the 3 previous years of the World Series of Warzone? I'm Ornery, and today we're taking a look at every Warzone World Champion so far. We'll be taking a look at each champion, so that means we'll be including solo, YOLO, and duos when it was available as well. But go ahead and comment your favorite Warzone pro as we get started. The first ever World Series of Warzone had a completely different format than what we're used to. We have our traditional trios and solo YOLO, but we also had duos. 6 maps were played, and the team with the highest score at the end wins it all. Score is based off of kills, and you can multiply those kills with placement, and on top of that, since this was somewhat during lockdown, this wasn't a LAN event and was hosted online. And since Warzone is popular worldwide, we had an NA Finals and an EU Finals. Starting with the NA Trios Finals, we have Team Aiden taking the cake. With the final score of 121.5, the runner-up would be Team Repulse with 108.5. Anyways, with Huskers and rated alongside him, they dominated the maps to take first place, primarily using the FAR and the Cold War MP5. I want to get one thing out of the way. A lot of people discredit this era of the World Series of Warzone because it's online and not LAN, which I know is annoying and all, but I mean, like, considering the circumstances, I will absolutely give Team Aiden the recognition they deserve, and every team that also played online that we're about to talk about as well. On top of this, there was also a Captain's Cup, which if you didn't know, during the first World Series of Warzone, there were 5 captains selected, being Swag, Aiden, Tim, Dan Dangler, and Nadeshot. How this worked was all the teams that qualified, which were 50, were drafted to each captain, and the score of each team was tallied up and allocated to each captain, and the captain with the most total points won. Basically like fantasy football, but for Warzone. For the trio segment, Swag won the Captain's Cup and got an extra $20,000 on top of his 3rd place finish. I think this was a pretty cool concept that I wouldn't mind coming back, since it gave you a collective group of teams to cheer for if you liked a specific captain. Kind of crazy to think that we used to have a duo section for World Series of Warzone, and I would love to see that come back, because I think that's part of the problem with World Series of Warzone. There's just not enough of it. Huskers and Noobs took the win on duos for North America, just above Biffle and Super Evan by only 4 points. Crazy thing about this was that Huskers had just won the Trios World Series only a few months prior to this, so you could argue that he was one of the best during this state of Warzone, especially for a mouse and keyboard player. I do want to say, since this is online, this is where Huskers gets called out for cheating nonstop, since a lot of players can't accept that someone can just be good at the game. Personally, don't think he's cheating whatsoever. But moving forward to the Captain's Cup, Swag is back at it again, taking home the $20,000 on back-to-back Captain's Cup wins. But this time battling up against Scump, Huskers, Teep, and Sean J. On to what I think is the most fun part about the World Series of Warzone, and that's the solo YOLO. Those that don't know, the solo YOLO is all the players that have already qualified compete in a 1-map competition, and whoever comes in first place takes home the prize. For North America Season 1, it was a whopping $100,000. And none other than the COD legend himself, Scump, is here for the first place prize. When you're in a 1-map wins-all situation, you're gonna find tons of ratty gameplay. And I mean, I don't blame you, because it's $100,000 on the line. While most players resort to riot shields, heartbeat sensors, Kali sticks, and vehicles, Scump stuck to a more traditional loadout, being the EM2 and a single Diamatti. In the last 1v1 against Aiden, he was able to bring home the win and had an awesome pop-off to go with it. Some people use this as evidence as CDL players being better than Warzone pros, which is probably true, but I think it's really cool regardless. On to the EO Trios champions for Season 1. For some reason, finding the EU footage for World Series of Warzone was a pain, and I could only find it on Wars channel. Team Jukies, consisting of Wars, Jukies, and FIFA Kill, took the win and beat everyone else by over 20 points, solidifying their spot as the EU Trios champs. We also have a Captain's Cup over at EU, and I'm sorry in advance if I say these names wrong because I'm honestly not familiar with them, but Team Recrent, or Resrent, I'm so sorry if I said that wrong, took the win against Gotaga, Angelica, MZ, and Moonride. Similar story here, had a really hard time finding footage for the EU Duos Champions of 2021. As a matter of fact, the only footage I could find was the Twitch VOD, which means we'll be seeing the World Series of Warzone overlay and also have very limited footage of the players we're actually talking about. But Method Sick and Daga won the EU Season 1 Duos. Funny thing about this was they were using snipers and shotguns, which not many other people were doing at the time. Also, nowadays, I don't even think you can use a shotgun since they're G8, so it's funny to see people use the Gallo when it was at its peak to win a tournament. We also have another Captain's Cup with Recreant, or Restaurant, however you say this dude's name, taking the cake again against Jukies, Gotaga, Moonride, and Dancud. Feel free to rip me up in the comments for the pronunciation. Okay, I promise I have normal footage for every single entry on this list after this one, but Chow won the Season 1 EU solo, and the only footage I could find of this was the footage of him reacting to himself winning. So kind of weird, but hey, it works. Anyways, unlike Scump, he did take the rat approach with the riot shield and stun grenades, and even had a shotgun to round everything off. With a very close down, but no finish in the final circle, he bounced back, finding a stun on the last player, and finishing them with a Gallo to round off this 3-kill, $100,000 win. On to Season 2 of the World Series of Warzone, where we have a slight restructure. No longer have duos at all, we're playing on Caldera, and the Captain's Cup has been scrapped as well. That means we only have trios and the solo YOLO. But since this was still all online, we've got NA and EU to get through. Starting with the NA trios, Team Skullface takes home the win with Skullface, Hisoka, and Mayapo. And I want to make one thing clear, this was only the start for Soka and his legacy to come. On a map like Caldera, gaining high ground is the name of the game, and that's exactly what Team Skullface dominated to win. FIFA Kill is our solo YOLO champion for North America, and he took a page out of Chow's book, but with a twist. Alongside his riot shield, instead of stun grenades, he was running stims, but not necessarily for movement. His strategy was to stay in the storm as long as possible and let the lobby eliminate each other before swooping in last second and taking first. And let me tell you, this worked perfectly. He also pulled this tech that I didn't even know about, where if you stay in the gas too long, it takes your health at a much faster rate, but if you leave the gas and let your health get back up, then go back into the gas, it resets and it doesn't take near as much. He abuses this by hitting the balloon of the gas, going to the circle and regenerating all the way back up while he's still in the air, then dropping back down in the gas to reset that timer. Truly genius. Then he waited for the last two to fight it out, and the rest is history. Team Vortex took the EU title, and I honestly don't have much to say other than they just dragged out every game and won some very crucial gunfights to make it out on top. The team consisted of Vortex, Blade, and Ultra Savvy. If Blade sounds familiar, that's because he not only won the EU trios, but the solo YOLO as well. Bro was rolling in it that day. Anyways, taking the traditional solo rat approach, he wouldn't get his first kill until a car would pull up to the building he was corner camping. He proceeds to stay in that same building for the following 3 circles since he had absolutely no reason to leave until the circle said so. Then took a car to another building where he finds one more fellow rat but takes him out no problem. Then uses this building for his next rat's nest. He takes out one more trying to infiltrate his base, then plays Burnout Paradise and COD until he's left with a 1v1 for the $100,000.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Now we're at the global final format, which means no more online finals, and we have an actual LAN event to attend. Taking place in London and Al Mazrah, we pretty much have the same format, only now there's absolutely no connection or cheating issues to be worried about. Team Biffle, consisting of Biffle, Sage, and Shifty, absolutely put this lobby in a blender and was the first step in crowning Biffle as the undisputed best player in all of Warzone. Melting everyone with the Lockman sub, but also the weird Signal 52 tap that was one of the most forgotten snipers we've ever seen, but definitely the meta for Warzone 2 rank. This is some of the most satisfying gameplay we've seen in professional Warzone. Also, this was only the start for Team Biffle, as we'll see with our next entries. Skullface is back on our list with a solo YOLO win on Al Mazrah. With one of the craziest endgames, it all could have been cut short had he not been gifted a free kill by none other than Sage in the Gulag. Why Sage did this, I do not know, but it ultimately gave Skull the win. Maybe since he already won the trios at this point, he was just feeling generous, but it was truly surprising. In an insanely chaotic endgame near the pipeline, Skullface weaseled his way on top to have a massive advantage over the other 2 players to get the win with no problem. Looking back at it, I honestly wish I mentioned the Gulag debacle in my Warzone controversy video. I was debating whether or not to put the Esports World Cup in here, but I figured I would just because I want to showcase how dominant Biffle and whatever team he puts together are. This was an event in Saudi Arabia that the Falcons took home with ease. The Falcons are the team that hosted the Esports World Cup and took on the franchising for Biffle, who has now dropped Sage and added Soka to their roster. Anyways, they played on Rebirth Island this time, but that was no problem for them because they still just wrecked. Anyways, EWC was more of a tournament style when it comes to the format, but basically still the same exact format going on here. They had like group stages, and once you made it out of that, there was gonna be like the final 21 teams or whatever. I really just wanted to include this to showcase how dominant the Falcons are, because we're still not even done talking about them because of our next and final entry. On to our last event, where I'll actually start with the solo YOLO being Nick Cool. Now, I was lucky enough to attend this event, and the solo YOLO was definitely one of the more exciting moments. Nick Cool came out on top with a half water finish that he played perfectly. I do want to give Zeppa some props here because he was absolutely frying this entire game and had some amazing high ground that just kept getting bombarded with streaks, which really sucked for him. I definitely thought he was going to win. But anyways, Nick Cool would play out of the water in a final 1v1 against none other than Zeppa, where he just had the better positioning on him and took home the win. The Falcons are back just 2 months after their over $1 million tournament in Saudi Arabia to take another $1 million tournament in Las Vegas at the World Series of Warzone Global Finals. Now, the format was a little bit different this year, where you have one day where 6 maps are played, and depending on your placement, you'll have advantage points going into day 2. On day 2, you now have to meet the match point threshold of 150 points, where you're eligible to win the entire tournament by simply coming in first place in your next game. Now, this template is awesome, but since Falcons had won 3 of the 6 maps on day 1, it was easy money for them on day 2 to take home the win. Once again, not only solidifying Biffle as the best player to ever touch Warzone, but also the Falcons as the best team to ever play the game. Funny enough, Biffle said this was his last year competing before the tournament started, but he also had this to say to close things off.
I know the competitors that want us, or they want me to leave because we're too dominant. But I think I'll stay in their nightmares one more year. I'll give it another year.
But that's every Warzone world champion this far. Go ahead and comment your favorite Warzone pro. Also, who are you cheering for this year? Check out the entire history of glitches and exploits, controversies, snipers, or shotguns in Warzone right here. Join my Discord if you're feeling crazy. And if you liked, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. And thank you so much for watching.